All right, guys, the bike is bolted down. We're going to talk about how I got it done. All right, my friends, what you see before you is U.S. Cargo Controls anchor point tie down kit. So what this is essentially is a kit that is made by the guys that are very commonly known for their L-track. But what they make is these singular points. So these singular points, they're rounded, they have a back plate, and then it comes with all the hardware, and then the snapping bolts to essentially slide in and snap down. Then you have an O-ring, which you can mount to. So these are $44, Amazon shipped, right? You can get them from Cargo Control, they're a little bit cheaper, but you pay shipping. Either way, U.S. company, made in the U.S., which I really, really like. So why did I choose to do these instead of the full gambit of the L-track, which would have given me more options? Let's look at the van. All right, so as you guys can see, I've already got some of these points mounted down. And also the tape that's in place is kind of a rough guesstimate of where my bed and storage and some of the other stuff's going to go. So why did I choose to do this instead of running long lengths of the L-track? Well, as many of you guys know, I am using the Van Rug flooring, which the Van Rug flooring, it's not a permanent floor. I'm not gluing anything down. I'm not leaving anything permanent. In fact, the Van Rug floor is right there. So I can easily pull it in and out to clean it or whatever the case may be. My bed and all my storage unit, I haven't really talked about that much yet, but it will be detachable. I'll basically be able to pull it off the mounting point of where everything's at and just pull everything right out. Should probably only take 10 to 15 minutes, frankly, and then I can just pull the floor out. So with that in mind, I didn't want to create a permanent subfloor with the van. The Van Rug works really well, and in conjunction with that, the L-track, I would have had to cut large strips out of it. So that is totally doable because the Van Rug flooring is really flexible. It's pretty easy to cut straight lines and so on and so forth, but at the same time, I'm not gonna lie, guys, the cost of the L-track is pretty high. It's not just the cost, but also if you look at, for example, if I was going to run L-track all the way up or all the way across in multiple places, I have to contend with everything underneath the van. There's multiple cross members, and the heat shielding is not that big a deal because of what I went with earlier, you know, cutting the holes in the heat shield to put the stuff in place. But because we're using, each one of these mounting points has this plate that goes on the back, this has to be clear on the bottom side, so there can't be like a channel of the body or bracing or anything like that that would interfere with that circle piece. So a long L-track that would just be, I would want a backing plate on it. So I chose to do these mostly because, number one, it was cheaper. Two of these kits, again, I got 8 mounting points for 90 bucks. That includes the clamps, all the hardware and everything. I was looking at over 200 for just basic L-track. And then I would have had to contend with the mounting points, which is really my second point. It's a lot easier to be able to just strategically put these in the right location, which is exactly what I'm doing. I just had my trials bike in here, so essentially I have 2, 4, 6, and I'll put another 4 down here. What that's going to end up with is, obviously, if I'm taking 2 bikes, I now have the 2 mounting points up front that you can see my bike is mounted in, which is sick. And I can even take it over a little bit, but the trials bike or another bike sits right here. If that's the case, then I'm going to have the other mounting points, which I'm doing right now, which will carry the pegs over, and these can be extras if I want to use them. Well, the converse is true, is if I flip the bike and load it in forward, I have these other points. Across the way, I'll always have multiple points to either mount to the pegs or frame, which I really, really like, or have additional mounting points, which I also really, really like, to come off the handlebars. Like in this case right here, I could easily run another bike beside my big bike and have the pegs here, and then have another rear mounting point to basically mount multiple positions of the track itself, or of the bike itself. So I think this is a really good setup. It also, at the end I'll show you guys when everything's back in how nice and smooth it is. It's not the van rug. I just, you know, cut circular holes in the van rug at the strategic points. It's very smooth because the rug is thick. It's nice and smooth. If I'm barefoot or walking around or getting changed or whatever, I'm not going to rip my toe across across the mounting point. So it's non-intrusive to the interior living of the van, and it also seems extremely functional. So I'm going to show you guys exactly how I'm doing this. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll just go through a little bit of the process with these last well, with these other two, and then the last two will obviously be boom and boom in the back for a total gambit of section. So at this point, I have drilled the holes, and this is pretty straightforward, right? The key here is this anchor requires a quarter inch hole, which I'm using my fancy stepper bit. I really like stepper bits because as you punch through, it just drops to the next size, as opposed to a standard drill bit could possibly punch through and drill something else. So if you guys aren't using stepper bits in your project, they're not always good for everything, like thicker material and things like that. But they do really have their place, which I really like using the stepper bit in this case, because if the tank or tire or whatever is below where I'm drilling, then the stepper bit instantly stops me. They do make drill bit guards. It's a ring that slides onto a standard bit and then has an Allen key that locks it onto the bit. I also highly recommend those if you don't have or want to spend the money on a stepper bit. But the thing about the guards is they're not always adjustable, and there's always a range of bits available. So in any case, I'm drilling quarter inch holes. Now I've already crawled under the van, and it's really nice because I'm actually measured, and I used some of the factory holes here that I've plugged up to articulate, or to basically coordinate where my area is going to be. So I knew that as long as I was on this side of the of these holes on this next rib, and somewhere in the middle here, then I would be good to go. What I couldn't do, I couldn't drill back in here, which is fine because this is where one of my storage units are going to be, this side anyway, covering the fender well. But because of there's a double plenum or a double body casting here, which I wasn't going to be able to do, which is fine. And I essentially did the same thing over here. I went underneath the van, I scouted it out, and made sure that anything that I put through there is not going to either A, hit anything, or B, I'll actually be able to put this bottom plate on the bottom. And I didn't mention this before, but that's what really makes these really nice, is because there is a bottom piece. These are rated for 1,000 pounds each. So each bike is going to have multiple tie down points. So I figure if a singular bike has at a minimum of 2,000 and then 4,000 total, I don't think I'm going to have any problems if I was to get into a collision because of the back plating and the multiple tie down points. So I really like that feature about it as well. All right, so at this point I have already taken rubbing alcohol and cleaned off the surface. One thing I will say is, because I've drilled a hole in the van and obviously there's going to be a top piece, I need to seal this, right? I just can't clamp it down, because otherwise moisture will get in here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to essentially seal the hole, put the hardware through, and then go through the bottom. So let's get after it. All right, guys, a couple notes here. Obviously, I'm getting ready to put the top piece on because I've drilled the holes already. So I am going to use just some basic silicone. You know, this is your DAP, Quick Seal, that or a caulking gun. Anything with high quality silicone will work great. At the end of the day, it's the same thing I use to plug the holes in the van from the seat rails as well. So easy stuff. I will say a note on hardware, that the hardware that does come with these, this is really good quality hardware. It's stainless steel. There's only one thing I don't like about it. That is, number one, they're not nylon locking nuts, and number two, the washer standard, right? So it's not too bad, but I think that it's probably worth taking the time to add a lock washer. So whenever I first started doing it, with the first two that I put down, I was putting high strength Loctite on the nuts themselves. And that was mostly just because over time, vibration, I don't want those nuts getting loose, and then that would ultimately make my anchor point loose. And if there was a collision, that play will allow the jerking motion to possibly rip the metal from its stay. So that's not good. However, I did notice that between playing with the silicone, using the silicone, and then getting my hands in there and doing the bolts and the nuts and all that, some of the harder to reach places, which the ones up front, I'm not going to lie, it took quite a while yesterday. It was pretty ridiculous. You know, after messing with it, and then because I'm solo, I don't have a way to put the screw, or to hold a screwdriver. My wife was gone yesterday. To hold it as I tightened everything down and as the Loctite was drying and all this other stuff. So I did decide to go ahead and just use some lock washers, and I think that's really going to be a key to success. The lock washer just adds another layer of protection, and then it is also ultimately going to serve the purpose. So let's get after it. Let's get some silicone on there and get some nuts in place. All right, so silicone, bolts are in place. So got a nice bead around there. I'll clean it up once everything's done and it's squished down completely with it being torqued. So let's go underneath and get my plate bolted in. Alright guys, the bolts are in place. So again, I use the nut, the lock washer, and then the standard washer. Now this plate kind of conformed to the body of the van, but that's fine, that's good. With these ribs in place, it's going to give it extra strength. So I'm pretty happy with it. These things are rated at 1,000 pounds per individual one. So with multiple tie downs, I should have no problem whatsoever with the interior. So this one's good to go. I'm going to go up, go up top, clean up the silicone, and then move forward. All right, looks like the other two are in place now. Super easy. So the last part is I'm going to put another mounting point here and another mounting point here to line everything up. That way I have essentially 2, 4, 6, 8 mounting points that I can connect 2 separate bikes. Mostly the plan is to do it from the pegs, and then have other support to the bars or the rear tire, depending on which direction things are facing. But that is 8,000 pounds of strength holistically. So I think I'm in a good spot for mounting a big bike and a trials bike, or just a big bike, or 2 big bikes will be tight, I'm not gonna lie. But I do believe they will fit. Obviously I don't have my bed and cabinets and all that in here yet, but once that gets in here, as you can see where my bike sits here, it's perfectly centered. So if I was going to slide, you know, the trials bike slips right there because it's so narrow and it's short. So if I was going to put another big bike in here, it'd be essentially what I would do is I would take my bike over to be vertical with this mounting point, which would still give me room. I have easily 10 inches from the handlebars to the glass there. So which would essentially bring this thing over probably 6 to 8 inches to be vertical from that peg, and then mount laterally, which would give me a ton of room here to go forward and then, you know, make room as I wouldn't run into my bed. So with that in mind, I will say that these are 35 inches from here to about the cutoff of where my rear tire would be. So I will say, if anybody's doing this, I'll stress, measure. Like, you know, if you can put the bike in there. And what I essentially was doing is I found that big bikes, almost all of them, depending on if it's a full-size frame bike, it's between 35 and 36 inches from the rear tire to the foot peg, depending on the tire and so on and so forth, but about that. And then it's about 51 to 52 inches from the front tire to the foot peg. So that gives you an idea of how much space you have. That way, you know, again, there's no need for me to add these long L-track bars all the way through the floor of the van. Strategic points with the bikes that I'm going to carry, I think this will pretty much knock it out. It'll wrap it up. I will say, obviously, if I run into an issue of something not fitting, or if I want to carry 3 bikes, I can always use the hitch mount. So that's another beautiful option with the van. The thing with the hitch mount is, yeah, get it, dog. It's at Carolina Lane. Anyway, the thing with the hitch mount is, obviously I wouldn't really have the security of everything being concealed inside the van. But again, if I was running to a race or just doing a camping weekend where I was going to be, you know, completely close to everything, I wouldn't worry about it. That wouldn't really be something that I would, I think I would have any issues with doing. So the ultimate goal is to be able to conceal and carry 2 full-size bikes inside the van, as well as me sleep inside the van, and I think I'm going to have no problem accomplishing that. If I want to carry a 3rd or 5 or whatever, then I'll just either use my rear tow hauler or use my bike trailer, which I used for the Hatfield McCoy trip. I still have it, my 6x8, so 6x10. Love that trailer. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and knock out these 2 rears, put the floor back in, make the cutouts, clean everything up, and I'll wrap it up.